To work with strings in Python, we have a lot of different tools we can use, and in a second I'm going to show you some of them. Obviously, not all of them, because they can basically be infinite. There's thousands of different Python libraries out there. It's pretty much impossible to learn every single one of them. So I'm just going to show you basic commands you can do without any additional libraries, just using the default Python ones. So the simplest thing you can do with Python is use it in a print command. And that command allows you to simply print out the text to the console. If we run the program, you can see it printed. That's exactly what the command does. Easy and simple. The next thing you can do with your strings is using the escape character. The escape character is pretty much just this backslash, and then the next thing you put after this backslash will determine what sort of thing you want to do with your string. So one of the things you can do is \n, and \n will basically tell Python that the thing you want to do is to put the rest of the string on the next line after the first one. So if we run the program now, it's going to print out welcome to and then Python on the second line. You can also use the escape character to use different symbols which you wouldn't be able to normally use in an actual string. So for example, quotes. If you put a single quote like that after a backslash and you run a program, it's going to print it out in your string, which is something you cannot do without using the \escape character. You could also use the same method to print out a second backslash, and it prints out a single backslash over here, but it also works if you just put one backslash in. So it all depends on the current situation you're having. It's always safer to just use a double backslash if you actually want to put a backslash in your text. For the next thing I want to show you, I'm going to have to create a variable called money. I'm going to apply a value 100 to it. And right now we're going to display this variable inside of a string in a couple of different methods. So the first method would be to display it this way, just using commas, separating it from the quotes and putting the variable in the middle. If you run the program, it displays your bank account has $100 on it. The second method you could use is replacing those commas with pluses. Just like that. One thing to keep in mind though, if you're doing it this way, you're going to have to make sure that the actual variable itself over here is a string and not a number. So if it is a number, you want to use a string function and apply this value to it. So to do that, you simply write str and then brackets and put your variable inside of it. Just like that. The string function which we're giving the money value into is transforming our variable into an actual string. So now we can use this method, and if we run the program, it's going to say the same exact thing. So that's another way to use it. There's also a third way in which you can display variables in a string, and I'm going to show it to you right now. And it's basically using formatted strings. So how you want to start doing that is you write f and then put your quotes in. And then wherever you have a word which you want to change in your variable, for example, here I wrote money because I know I'm going to use the money variable, you just have to put the curly brackets over it. And that's how you tell the formatted string that it's a value you're passing to it for it to display. So if I run the program now again, it's going to print out the exact same thing. Your bank account has $100 on it, just like with the previous two methods. I personally prefer the third method, I use it a lot, but it's up to your personal preference, and you might have different needs depending on what projects you're working on. So the next thing you can do with strings is to put them into a variable, of course a string type variable. So to do that, you simply give the variable a name, for example phrase, and then you apply a value in quotes into it. So for example, Python code. And now we're going to do a lot of different operations you can actually perform on such a string. The first one simply merging it with it. The first method is simply merging it with a separate string. So for example, in our print method, if we input our string variable into it, then add a plus sign and then another string already in here, or it could be another variable, for example, phrase2 or anything else you would call. It's going to merge those two strings together and display it as one. So if I run the program right now, it's going to say Python code is cool, just like here. It takes the phrase variable, which is Python code, and adds isCool string into it. Of course, you could also print out a single variable, which is a string, simply putting print and then in brackets putting the name of the variable. If you do it that way and you run the program, it's going to say Python code because our string is Python code.